the intended Western distortions of the People's Republic of Albania under Hoxha and its unique democratic structure. The People's Socialist Republic of Albania, 1946 to 1991, led by Enver Hoxha, has been caricatured constantly, but, from a deeper analysis, inconsistently, in the West as a dystopia, as a brutal totalitarian cloister oppressing all freedoms. This image, a distorted one by Cold War propaganda, obscures the fact that Albania's socialist democratic structure actually empowered workers and peasants, women, and other generally marginalized, that is, exploited groups through organs of participatory power, mass and anti-imperialist national sovereignty. Declassified CIA documents reveal orchestrated U.S.-sponsored disinformation campaigns and subversion operations which sought to paint false pictures of oppression, providing the pretext for regime change. Diametrically opposite to this, internal Albanian archives reflect a system of proletarian democracy, wherein sovereignty was in the hands of the masses. Just turning Western liberal elitism upside down, it turns bourgeois pluralism over its head by placing collective mass rule above everything. The Albania of Hoxhaism incarnated an alternative to Western capitalist bourgeoisie pseudo-democracy, not in the form of a charade world of multi-party systems which are all controlled from above by capital, but in terms of real popular sovereignty, fought for and forged against fascism. Albania's democratic structure emerged from the 1941 to 1944 National Liberation War, where the Communist Party of Albania, later Party of Labour of Albania PLA, led a broad anti-fascist national liberation war, uniting diverse forces against Italian and German occupation. Internal archives from the Central State Archives in Tirana document this as the foundation of popular power. The Central Council functioned as a provisional parliament, electing delegates from partisan brigades and local committees, ensuring representation from rural and urban laborers. The 1946 Constitution, based on the Soviet Yugoslav model but adjusted to Albanian local national conditions, established the People's Assembly as the highest institution of people's power, with 250 deputies elected every 4 years in equal population constituencies. Unlike Western conceptions of wealth-based lobbying, the Albanian communist approach to elections stressed mass mobilization. The Democratic Front umbrella for PLA-led organizations mounted joint lists, yet nominations were delivered up from factories and village assemblies where candidates withstood open debate and community approval. Voter involvement turnout was greater than 92% in 1945, and records of debates showed arguments were held in over 1,000 local meetings, illustrating the voluntary nature as opposed to being forced. This configuration was further strengthened by the 1976 Constitution, one of the cornerstones of Hoxhaist democracy. Records from the PLA Central Committee document nationwide consultations and assemblies which saw 1.5 million citizens, half of the country's population, discussing proposals for land reform, women's rights, anti-revisionist clauses, etc. in meetings held between 1976-77. Summarizing for the 7th PLA Congress, Hoxha declared, "The new constitution is an embodiment of the free will of the Albanian people, and underlining that mass socialist democracy was indispensable to genuine socialism." The individual freedoms in the Constitution were balanced out through equal collective obligations. Fascist, dogmatic, and anti-socialist propaganda was forbidden, whereas speech, assembly, and organization for proletarian purposes, Articles 37-55, was a guaranteed right. Worker councils called Punitoret Këshilla and peasant committees, as outlined in declassified Sigurimi files from state security, oversaw the administration of factories and collective farms by bottom-up democratically electing supervisors from the workers' own ranks and establishing production norms on a democratic basis. Communist Albania achieved 47% female workforce and participation, and at minimum 40% representation in the People's Councils by 1988 through the Women's Councils under the Union of Albanian Women, transforming patriarchal norms around women and labor, while educating, mobilizing, and organizing, that being what internal memos credit to mass input rather than top-down fiat. These processes and achievements turned Western democracy on its head, as where liberal democracies root class rule in moneyed elections, Albania ensconced classless participation with the PLA as a guide, not a ruler, that is consistent with Article 3's emphasis on a dictatorship of the proletariat Western misrepresentation was not accidental, but one of the many strategically managed psyops around the communist world, as declassified CIA documents verify. Operation Valuable, 1949 to 1953, carried out with MI6, sought to infiltrate commandos and deliver propaganda leaflets calling for uprising against Hoxha, falsifying an account that there was a broad-based opposition. A 1950 CIA memo pegged Albanian internal hostility towards Hoxha at around the 80% level, and reported that party leadership privately conceded provocations did not merely result from bad apples, but popular regime support. Not only were over 200 agents to be captured throughout the years, with many executed after show trials exposing Western ties. Declassified reports from the CIA's Foreign Documents Division point to planted stories in exiled media denouncing elections as charades like such a well-disembodied state didn't show how gilded consultative processes were. In 1951, ORI 7149 intelligence report on Albania's current situation drew attention away from Hoxha's policies in alignment with Soviet Union as impositions that were difficult, augmenting economic difficulties stemming from embargoes by U.S. authorities as tyranny, while not mentioning self-reliance aspirations rooted in mass drives. Also, the 1960s document on the Albanian political situation lists how Bali Kombëtar remnants, that is, pro-Western nationalists, were funded to send disinformative broadcasts through Radio Free Europe, alleging Sigurimi torture, whereas Albanian archives reveal purges targeted foreign spies, not dissenters. These operations, according to a 1997 declassification, aimed at overthrowing the communist regime by inflating repression, flipping reality on its head. Hoxha's will to achieve autarky, bred by betrayals by Yugoslavia and the USSR, was misrepresented as paranoia to veil its hegemony in the Balkans. Hoxhaist Albania's democracy was the diametrical opposite of Western ones, which are based on elite conflict more than mass mobilization. Western so-called democracy, in which working people are offered false choices at the ballot box with low voter turnout, frequently below 60%, and policy is shaped by generous corporate liberal donors, as critiqued in Albanian ideological texts found housed in Tirana's archives, promotes capitalist exploitation. In Albania, 92 to 99% participation embodied an organic mobilization, with worker councils who could veto managerial decisions. Opened factory logs from the 1950s now available are telling, guaranteeing the immediate rule of labor. Sex equality and gender equality in councils broke feudal veils, as opposed to bourgeois gender and sex limits. The religious bans were not really bans of religion, but rather bans against religious institutions having political power, and bans against religious aggression towards fellow people. It was also intended for the development and furthering of the sciences and scientific materialism, as per Hoxha's writings from years 70 to 90, raising unity above division. CIA Psychiatric Assessments of Hoxha, declassified 1998, admitted his anti-imperialist card was dealt through wartime legitimacy rather than compulsion, but propaganda fixated on bunkers 170,000 erected via voluntaria labor as paranoia symbols, failing to mention the role they served in collective defense. Post-1991 archives, some Sigurimi, show the extent to which Western-backed elements erased gains made under Hoxha in literacy, up from 20% under capitalism, up to 98% under communism and healthcare. Declassified CIA forays in which those fabrications were put to use, such as was the case of Operation Valuable, all prove that Western distortion was calculative and premeditated, used as weapons at hand when it came to delegitimizing Albania's in general socialist proletarian democracy. Internal records shed light on a system of participatory sovereignty, where people held power, not markets, not capital, the deep inversion of liberal veneers that justified imperialism. Retrieving this history shatters time-worn myths, proving Socialist Albania to be the basis for a real socialist democratic society.